They didn't take advantage of you because you were weak. They took advantage of you because you were kind, and they saw that kindness as a weakness they could exploit. You thought being nice would heal them. You thought patience would prove your worth. You thought silence would make them reflect. But to a narcissist, your niceness is ammunition. Your empathy is currency. And your silence, just a green light to push further. The world told you to kill them with kindness. But what if I told you that advice was your trap? In this video, you'll learn the brutal truth behind why you should never be nice to a narcissist again, and how to reclaim your self-worth. Set powerful psychological boundaries and embody the kind of quiet confidence they can't manipulate. This isn't about revenge, it's about inner power. Let's begin. They told you to be nice. From the moment you could walk, talk, or disagree, you were conditioned to smile through discomfort, to stay quiet instead of challenge, to prioritize harmony over honesty. Be nice, they said, as if it were the highest virtue, as if niceness alone could save relationships, soften cruelty, and redeem the broken. But here's the truth. Being nice is not the same as being good. And in the wrong hands, niceness is a leash, not a virtue. What they didn't teach you is this: nice people get used. Nice people get drained. Nice people get destroyed. Not because kindness is weakness, but because unprotected kindness becomes a weapon in the hands of those who know how to manipulate. Let's be brutally honest. In a world that includes narcissists, emotional abusers, and chronic manipulators, being nice without emotional intelligence is a setup. You become predictable. You become easy to guilt, easy to shame, easy to control. And they know it. Niceness is taught. Discernment is earned. Most people who fall into this trap are not naive. They are overtrained in people-pleasing. Somewhere along the way, they learned that love is earned through self-abandonment, that if you're kind enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, eventually, the other person will see your worth. But here's what really happens. You disappear. Not to the world, but to yourself. You shrink to fit into the image of who they want you to be. You apologize for your own boundaries. You explain your pain like you owe someone a reason to feel it. And when they hurt you, you stay silent, hoping that silence will speak louder than truth. But to a narcissist, silence only signals opportunity. This isn't kindness. It's a pattern of emotional self-erasure, and it comes from a deep fracture in self-worth. Why narcissists love nice people? A narcissist doesn't want a relationship. They want an emotional supply. They want validation without accountability, attention without effort, and loyalty without reciprocity. To them, a nice person is a mirror, one who reflects their ego, absorbs their blame, and never dares to crack that image with truth. You become their favorite kind of person, not because they love you, but because they can use you, and the more you try to show them your heart, the more they sharpen their blade behind their smile. Stoicism isn't about niceness, it's about boundaries. Here's what the ancient Stoics understood. Being kind does not mean being weak. Being gentle does not mean being submissive. And being forgiving does not mean allowing repeated harm. To live well is to live with discernment. To see people as they are, not as you wish they were. and to stop giving unearned grace to those who abuse it. A Stoic doesn't react in rage, but they don't tolerate disrespect either. They don't seek revenge, but they remove access. Their boundary is not loud. It's clear, final, and unshakable. The new definition of strength. From now on, your strength is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate in silence. It's measured by your ability to walk away with quiet confidence from anyone who makes your love feel like a debt. You don't owe your light to people who live in the shadows. You don't owe your kindness to those who weaponize it. And you sure as hell don't owe an explanation for protecting your peace. Niceness isn't what heals you. Boundaries do. Clarity does. Self-respect does. Bekind. But do not let your kindness become your cage. The strongest hearts have walls not to keep love out, but to keep manipulation from coming in. You were not born to be agreeable. You were born to be whole. Imagine this. You walk into a room full of people, some loud, some quiet, some guarded, some open-hearted. The narcissist scans the crowd. They don't look for the strongest. They look for the kindest, because that's where the easiest target hides. 2. A narcissist. Your kindness isn't beautiful. It's useful. Your empathy, their playground. Your compassion, their camouflage. Your willingness to see the best in people, their perfect opportunity to show you the worst in them without consequence. This isn't accidental. This is predatory psychology. The narcissist's radar, how they spot you instantly. Narcissists are not dumb. They're not just emotional vampires. They are skilled psychologists in their own twisted way. They've spent a lifetime learning how to manipulate human behavior, often without even realizing they're doing it consciously. So how do they identify someone to exploit? You apologize too quickly, even when you're not wrong. You rush to maintain peace. That's music to their ears. You avoid conflict. They see this as a weakness. If you won't push back, they can push further. You over-explain your intentions. This tells them you seek approval. And that's a lever they can pull any time. You give endless chances, one mistake forgivable. 2. Maybe. But a pattern of forgiveness without consequence tells them, I can do what I want here. To a narcissist. This isn't kindness, it's open access. Why empathy attracts exploitation? Empathy is beautiful. It's human. It's powerful. But when it's offered without discernment, it becomes dangerous. Think about it like this. Empathy is like giving someone the keys to your emotional house. You assume they'll be careful with it, maybe even protect it. But a narcissist, they walk in, rearrange the furniture, steal your peace, and blame you for leaving the door open. They don't respect empathy, they exploit it. And the more you try to reason with them, the more they manipulate that reason to suit their narrative. The role of emotional intelligence. This is where emotional intelligence becomes your armor. Emotional intelligence is not about being endlessly understanding. It's about knowing who deserves your understanding. It's the wisdom to recognize manipulation dressed as charm, and the restraint to protect your energy instead of trying to fix someone else's broken soul. High emotional intelligence allows you to spot patterns. Not just apologies, trust your gut. Not their words. Pause before reacting and decide if it's even worth your reaction. The moment you develop this level of discernment, something shifts. You stop being prey. You become a mirror, one that reflects reality so clearly. The narcissist begins to fear you instead of use you. What happens when they can't manipulate you anymore? Here's the irony. The moment your kindness becomes protected when it's paired with self-worth, psychological boundaries, and emotional strength, narcissists lose interest. You're no longer fun. You're no longer easy to guilt. You stop dancing around their drama, and that shatters their illusion of control. They'll say you've changed, that you've become cold or selfish. But what's really happening is this. They can no longer reach the version of you that was willing to self-destruct for their comfort. The Stoic way power in detachment. A Stoic doesn't chase approval. They don't explain their worth. They don't fight to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding them. They observe. They discern. And when the pattern becomes clear, they walk. Not in anger, not in noise, but with quiet confidence, the kind that shakes the narcissist to their core. Because nothing terrifies a narcissist more than a once kind person who now has boundaries, a heart that stays kind, but not blind. That's the one thing a manipulator cannot defeat. At some point in your healing, there comes a strange, almost sacred moment. You catch yourself mid-sentence, about to justify why you didn't reply, why you set a boundary, why you finally walked away, and then you stop, not out of anger, not out of spite, but because you finally realize you don't owe them anything. Why narcissists thrive on your explanations to the narcissist. Your explanations are not just words. They are leverage points. Every justification gives them more material to twist. Every clarification gives them more ammunition to gaslight. Every emotional paragraph is like music to their ego because it means you still care. And as long as you keep explaining yourself, they remain in control of the emotional frame. They stay in the driver's seat, dictating the terms, the timeline, the tone of the conversation. But when you stop, that's when everything changes. The psychological impact of silence. Silence is not just the absence of words, it's the presence of power. It communicates things. Words. Can't I've seen through your game. I no longer seek your understanding. My peace is not up for discussion. When you stop explaining, they lose their ability to spin. They panic, because without your emotional reactions, there's no feedback loop to feed their superiority or their victimhood. You become unpredictable. And for someone who survives by controlling narrative, unpredictability is terrifying. Real-life example, the emotional cutoff. Take Alina, a woman who spent 3 years trying to coexist peacefully with a covert narcissist. He gaslit her subtly, always needing her to explain her tone, her timing, her choices. Every conversation turned into a courtroom, and every apology she gave was used against her later, until one day she replied with just 2 words. Noted. No defense. No justification. No entry into the emotional arena. He spiraled, called her cold, accused her of changing, but in truth, she hadn't changed. She had evolved. Self-worth doesn't argue. Here's the reality. Self-worth doesn't argue to be seen. It doesn't beg to be heard. It doesn't explain itself to people who've already decided not to understand. Every time you over-explain, you give them access to your inner world. And narcissists don't visit to respect it, they visit to rearrange it. Let your no be a sentence. Let your silence speak volumes. Let your boundaries stand without footnotes. You are not rude for being clear. You are not cold for being calm. You are not arrogant for refusing to shrink into someone else's expectations. You're finally grounded. The Stoic way: quiet confidence over verbal combat. The Stoics didn't waste time convincing fools. They didn't engage in circular arguments. They knew that some minds weren't seeking truth. They were seeking control. So they mastered a discipline most never achieve: stillness when provoked, silence when baited, calm detachment when accused, because the ultimate form of emotional intelligence is knowing when to speak and when to walk away without a dissonance. Word. Those who understand you don't need explanations, and those who demand them will never truly listen anyway. Guilt. That quiet, creeping emotion that doesn't shout, but lingers. It whispers, "Maybe I was too harsh." It asks, "What if I was wrong?" It manipulates your integrity using your own conscience against you. And no one knows how to weaponize it better than a narcissist. Why guilt is so effective? Narcissists know something most people don't. Guilt doesn't require proof. It just needs suggestion. They don't need to show evidence. They just need to say things like, "After all I've done for you, you've really changed. Haven't you? I guess you don't care anymore." And suddenly, you're defending yourself. Not because they're right, but because you're kind. Because you care about being fair, balanced, ethical. That's the trap. They exploit your emotional intelligence to serve their ego. The psychology behind the guilt game. Guilt is a form of emotional leverage. It works especially well on people who are empathic, reflective, and deeply human. Here's how the cycle works. 1. You set a boundary. 2. They react passively or aggressively. 3. You feel guilty for upsetting them. 4. You soften or retract the boundary. 5. They regain control. This isn't love. It's psychological manipulation dressed as emotional connection. And if you don't recognize it, you'll stay stuck in that guilt loop for years, confusing abuse with accountability. Real-life example, the guilt bomb message. Let's look at David, a man who finally cut contact with his narcissistic ex after a year of gaslighting and silent treatments. A month later, he receives this text. "I just want you to know, I'm still hurting." I guess it's easy for some people to just walk away like nothing ever mattered. Not direct blame. Just emotional bait disguised as vulnerability. The goal, to make him question his healing, to make him feel like a villain for choosing peace. But David didn't reply, because he understood this rule. When someone causes the wound, they don't get to guilt you for applying the bandage. Stoic wisdom: don't let guilt override reality. The Stoics taught that emotions must be examined, not obeyed. Guilt, especially when imposed by others, must be interrogated. Ask yourself, is this guilt based on truth or on manipulation? Do I feel guilty because I was wrong, or because they feel uncomfortable with my strength? Am I betraying myself just to soothe someone who keeps hurting me? If the guilt comes from upholding your integrity, your boundaries, your peace, then it's not real guilt. It's just emotional residue from years of being conditioned to serve dysfunction. How to disarm the guilt trap? Here's what works. 1. Name it. Say to yourself, this is not compassion. This is guilt projection. 2. Anchor to reality. Write down what actually happened, who crossed the line, who apologized, who didn't. 3. Reframe your loyalty. Ask, am I being loyal to them or to my own healing? 4. Let them sit with their discomfort. You are not responsible for how they react to your truth. You're responsible for holding it. And finally, you don't need to feel guilty for refusing to suffer. The narcissist's nightmare, a calm no. The narcissist expects argument. They expect emotional turmoil. They want you spinning, overthinking, regretting, explaining. But when you calmly say no, without anger, without panic, without apology, you destroy the entire emotional script they were counting on. That's not cruelty. That's inner power. When you no longer feel guilty for choosing peace over chaos, you finally escaped their system. There's a moment, often subtle, when the trap closes. You're trying to be kind, trying to be clear, trying to be the bigger person. So you explain yourself. I didn't mean it that way. I just thought maybe you misunderstood. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need space. But with the narcissist, every explanation is not heard. It's stored, not for empathy, but for ammunition. Why? Explaining yourself doesn't work. A narcissist doesn't want to understand you. They want to use what you say to control how you feel. When you explain yourself, you give them your emotional map so they know exactly where to push. Your insecurities so they know where to jab. Your intentions so they can twist them back on you. They don't hear your words with empathy. They analyze them like a predator analyzing its prey. The loop of explanation. You explain because you're hoping for fairness. They listen to weaponize, not resolve. You leave feeling misunderstood. So you explain again. They twist it again. And so the loop continues. This isn't communication. It's psychological erosion. The more you explain, the more they gaslight. The more they gaslight, the more you feel crazy. That's not conversation. That's warfare. Real life example, the text trap. Let's say you set a boundary. You say, I need space. I'm focusing on my mental health right now. They reply, wow, that's cold. I guess I was just a burden to you this whole time. Now you feel pulled to explain, to soften, to fix how they feel about your decision. But that's the trap. Because what you're actually doing is negotiating your right to peace. Stoic insight, protect your energy from justification. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is right, do not be anxious about it. You don't need to explain what's aligned with truth, especially not to someone who's already decided you're the villain in their narrative. The Stoics taught clarity does not require approval. Boundaries do not require consensus. Integrity does not require applause. What happens when you stop explaining? At first, they panic. Your silence feels like rejection. Your calm feels like defiance. Your self-trust feels like war. And that's because for the first time, they're not the one controlling the story. You are. The shift from justifying to stating. There is a massive psychological difference between justifying yourself and calmly stating your position. Instead of saying, "I just want to clarify what I meant," say, "That's not up for discussion." Instead of saying, "I didn't mean to hurt you," say, "I stand by what I said." Instead of saying, "I was only trying to help," say, "That was my choice, and I don't need to explain it." This shift is called quiet confidence, a powerful emotional posture that doesn't require approval, doesn't seek validation, and doesn't negotiate truth. It completely unnerves narcissists because it starves them of the drama they depend on to control the narrative. Psychological boundary detachment from outcome. When you stop explaining, you stop needing their agreement. And when you stop needing their agreement, you stop being emotionally enslaved. You're no longer in a tug of war. You've dropped the rope. And that, my friend, is when your inner power becomes untouchable. When they can no longer provoke you into defending yourself, they've lost control of your mind. Anger is loud, but calm is terrifying, especially to a narcissist. You see, narcissists are not empowered by truth. They are fueled by chaos. And nothing disrupts their illusion of power faster than your unshakable calm. They expect drama, not discipline. The narcissist thrives in emotional storms because that's where they manipulate best. They poke, they provoke, they wait for the explosion. Why? Because if you explode, they can say, "See, you're the unstable one." If you cry, they can say, "You're too sensitive. I can't talk to you." If you defend yourself, they twist your words to paint themselves as the victim. But when you stay calm, they lose all control because you're no longer reacting, you're reflecting. Calm is a mirror. Your calmness becomes a mirror they can't escape. It reflects their manipulative tactics, their lack of accountability, their internal chaos. And worst of all, it reflects your self-mastery. That's what truly enrages them, not because you're wrong, but because they can't pull you into their dysfunction anymore. Your calm reveals everything they've tried to hide, even from themselves. Stoic power detachment without coldness. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be indifferent. It teaches you to be internally anchored. Epictetus said, "Anyone capable of angering you becomes your master." The moment you choose calm over conflict, you take back your power. It's not weakness. It's control. It's not submission. It's sovereignty. Real-life example, the silent reaction. You've just been accused of something you didn't do. They're baiting you with false claims, twisting your words. But instead of defending, you simply say, "That's your version of the story," and walk away. No debate, no justifying, no reaction to a narcissist. This is psychological death, because their entire sense of control is built on your need to defend yourself. Calm denies them the stage. Think of it like this. A narcissist builds a stage. They script the scene. They cast you as the villain. But when you respond with calm, you refuse to perform. You don't read the script. You don't even step on stage. Now they're left, shouting, alone. And nothing feels more powerless to them than that. Psychological boundary, emotional neutrality. This doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you process emotions privately, not performatively. You speak from grounded clarity, not wounded impulse. You stop being predictable because your peace is no longer for sale. That's what makes your calm so dangerous. They want to trigger you, but your calm tells them you are untriggerable. And that's when they start to panic. Not because they've lost you, but because they can no longer control you. There is a moment in every toxic dynamic where the balance of power shifts. Not with shouting, not with revenge, but with something far more terrifying to the narcissist, your detachment. Because the moment you emotionally detach, you're no longer a player in their game. You're the one who flipped the board and walked away. Emotional intelligence is a silent revolution. Narcissists count on you being emotionally reactive. They study your triggers. They memorize your insecurities. They weaponize your empathy. But emotional intelligence flips the script. It teaches you how to pause, to observe, not absorb, to respond instead of reacting. And when you do that consistently, something magical happens. You stop playing roles. You stop explaining. You stop dancing for their approval. You become unreadable. And to a narcissist that's pure hell, you were the mirror, now they're facing themselves. You see, narcissists never truly connect with people. They connect with reflections of themselves. As long as you admired them, praised them, and chased their approval, you served their ego. But once you detach, they're left staring into a void. No validation, no attention, no reflection to maintain their illusion. And what's left is something they've avoided their whole lives, the rotting foundation beneath their inflated self-image. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. Some people confuse detachment with cruelty. But make no mistake, true detachment is not about punishing them, it's about protecting you. You're no longer trying to prove your worth to someone who never valued it. You're no longer exhausting yourself to maintain a relationship built on shifting lies. You're no longer negotiating with someone who only listens when it benefits them. That's not cold. That's quiet confidence. That's spiritual discipline. That's the moment your self-worth becomes non-negotiable. Real-life moment, the narcissist's panic spiral. Imagine this. You've gone silent. No arguments. No long texts. No emotional outbursts. Just distance. Suddenly, they start love-bombing again. Old pictures. Just thinking of you. Random check-ins masked as concern. But you don't engage. You don't reply. Or if you do, it's short, emotionless, surgical. Their mask begins to crack, because now they're the one chasing not out of love, but out of fear. Fear that they've lost their control. Fear that you've finally outgrown them. And that's when they drown, not in your silence, but in the weight of their own exposed ego. Psychological boundary, you don't owe closure. One of the hardest lessons in dealing with narcissists is this: you don't owe them understanding. You don't owe them softness. You don't owe them access to your peace. Closure is a myth they invented to keep the door cracked open. But you don't just close the door. You lock it. bolt it, and walk past it like it never existed, because your healing doesn't require their apology. Your evolution isn't built on their awareness. Your life doesn't pause just because they're confused. High-performance mindset, forward, is the only direction. When you detach emotionally, you make room for something much greater, real growth, inner peace, focused ambition. The high-performance mindset that doesn't chase it, creates, because once you stop proving yourself to the wrong people, you start becoming the right version of you. You finally see how small their world was, how limited their thinking was, how you were dimming your light to fit inside their insecurities, but not anymore. You're not detaching to hurt them. You're detaching because your future can't fit in their chaos. The narcissist's downfall, you don't care anymore. They'll try everything: guilt, projection, gaslighting, future faking. But nothing works on someone who no longer seeks validation. Someone who no longer feels the need to be liked, understood, or forgiven by someone who abused their trust. And that's their downfall. Because nothing is more threatening to a narcissist than someone they can't affect anymore. They can't win. Not because you destroyed them, but because you refused to be destroyed. There's a type of healing that doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It doesn't post quotes. It doesn't beg for closure. It just quietly closes the door and locks it from the inside. You don't heal to make a statement. You heal because your soul has finally outgrown the cage they kept you in. And that's when the game changes forever. Healing is the end of the transaction. Narcissists rely on unhealed people because as long as you're bleeding, they can offer the bandage. As long as you doubt yourself, they can offer false certainty. As long as you seek their approval, they have leverage. But when you heal, truly heal, that transaction ends. You no longer explain yourself, justify your worth, apologize for your boundaries, tolerate emotional crumbs. Healing is the moment you become psychologically expensive. The cost to mistreat you, immediate disconnection. Quiet healing is greater than loud revenge. They expected you to collapse, to spiral, to be Francis. But instead, you elevated. You read, you trained, you built new habits. You set emotional intelligence as your new baseline. You stopped reacting and started designing. And while they were busy stalking your silence, you were mastering your peace. That's the part they'll never understand. You didn't move on to spite them. You moved on because you remembered who the hell you are. Real healing equal memory without trigger. You know you're healed when you remember what they did without bitterness, without rage, without even flinching. Not because it wasn't traumatic, but because it no longer defines you. The wound became wisdom. The pain became power. And now, that chapter is closed, not in anger, but in indifference. You've upgraded. You're not just harder to access, you're impossible to reach. The final boundary, sacred inner peace. There is a peace that no apology can buy, a silence that no manipulation can crack. It's the kind of inner stillness that makes narcissists panic, because now you're untouchable. Your reactions, gone. Your guilt, gone. Your need to explain, dead and buried. You've set a psychological boundary so strong, even your past self wouldn't recognize you. That's not just healing, that's spiritual discipline. No access equals no control. Narcissists don't miss you, they miss your vulnerability. They miss your access. The ability to trigger you, manipulate you, feed off your empathy. But now they're locked out, permanently, not because you hate them, but because you've chosen to live in a frequency they can't survive in. You've raised your vibration, your mindset, your circle, your standards. They never expected you to evolve. They only expected you to react. And now, all they can do is watch. From a distance they'll never cross again. High-performance mindset. Your life is your closure. You don't need to tell them anything. Not "I'm done." "I'm healing." "I forgive you." You don't owe them an ending they didn't respect from the beginning. Your life is the ending. Your progress is the punctuation. Your transformation is the revenge and the redemption. Because here's the truth: when you heal, they don't get to see you anymore. Not the strong you, not the free you, not the finally at peace version of you. They lost that privilege the moment they gambled with your heart. And now, they can only remember what it felt like to almost have someone rare. It always happens, just when you've begun to breathe again, when the silence starts to feel peaceful, when you're rebuilding your life from the ground up. They come back, but not because they've changed, not because they've suddenly found empathy, and definitely not because they've realized your worth. They come back because they feel you slipping out of their psychological grip. And for a narcissist, that's a crisis. Why do they come back? Narcissists are driven by control, not connection. They don't bond, they bind. And once you stop feeding their ego, your absence creates a void they can't fill. But here's the brutal truth: they don't miss you. They miss the role you played, the mirror that reflected their inflated image, the sponge that absorbed their emotional chaos, the emotional ATM they could withdraw from on demand. Now that you've built psychological boundaries, they can feel it like an addict sensing sobriety in someone they used to control. They come back to reignite chaos, not rebuild connection. Their return is never clean. They don't return with truth. They return with tactics. Sometimes it's love bombing. "I've been thinking about you. No one gets me like you do." Sometimes it's guilt tripping. "You've changed. I guess I never meant that much to you." And sometimes it's pure baiting, so you're just going to pretend none of it mattered. These aren't apologies. They're hooks designed to reactivate the emotional circuits you've worked so hard to rewire. It's not reconciliation. It's a test of your emotional intelligence. The cycle will always repeat. Let's make one thing clear: the narcissist isn't back for healing. They're back for another round of manipulation disguised as vulnerability, empty promises soaked in urgency, changed behavior that lasts just long enough to trap you again. They don't want peace. They want access. And if you give them a second chance, it won't be a new chapter. It'll be a repeat episode with a better disguise. You'll know this deeply if you've ever taken them back before. The words may sound new, but the pattern never lies. Rejection is protection. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to explain. You don't need to defend your silence. All you need to do is not open the door. Not emotionally, not energetically, not even mentally, because the moment you entertain their message, even for a second, they've gotten what they came for: your attention, your energy, your peace, and you've already paid that price before. This time, you protect your inner power like it's sacred, because it is. Real strength is in the response you don't give want. To know what really destroys a narcissist, it's not a savage comeback, not a long explanation, not even a flawless success story. It's the void. It's the silence, the refusal to re-engage, the quiet confidence that says, "You are no longer welcome in my reality." Not with anger, but with peace. A peace that screams, "I know my worth now. You are no longer accessible. You've done the work. You've spent nights untangling trauma they never acknowledged. You've cried over betrayals they gaslit you for. You've rebuilt yourself in silence, without applause, without closure. You don't owe them access to the healed version of you. They didn't help you build this peace, so they don't get to sit in it. This isn't revenge. It's spiritual discipline. It's the decision to only allow in what nourishes, not what depletes. You've stopped chasing potential and started protecting your peace. Emotional intelligence don't let guilt trick you. They'll say you're heartless. They'll say you're holding a grudge. They'll say, "But everyone deserves a second chance." But deep down, you know the truth. Forgiveness is internal. Access is earned. And not everyone who's sorry deserves to stand beside your healing. This is where emotional intelligence kicks in, when you recognize the difference between being kind and being naive. Your peace is not a negotiation. It's your standard now. Closing the door doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. Letting them back in won't restore the past, it'll rob the future. So don't reopen the chapter you were strong enough to close. You're not who you used to be. You're not waiting for closure. You're not explaining your growth. You're just done, and that is what terrifies them. They wanted you to explode. They counted on it. They hoped that even after all the chaos, betrayal, and gaslighting, you'd still feel the need to react, to prove something, explain something, beg for closure, or fight back with emotional fire. But instead, you chose silence. And nothing unsettles a narcissist more than that. Silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. Let's be clear, silence is not passivity. It's not giving up. It's not retreat. It's a psychological boundary carved in steel. Silence says, "I'm done playing chess with someone who flips the board. I no longer seek clarity from chaos. I don't need to defend what I already know." It's not a tactic, it's transformation. You're no longer reacting from pain. You're responding from power. This is what emotional intelligence looks like in its highest form. The ability to not be pulled into someone else's storm just because they throw thunder in your direction. Narcissists need your reaction to feel real. Here's the harsh truth to a narcissist. Your emotional reaction is proof that they still matter, that they still own space in your head. They don't care if you love them or hate them, as long as you're engaged. They're in control. But silence is the mirror turned away. It's the oxygen cut off. It's the reflection gone dark. They can't stand it, because now they're irrelevant. Quiet confidence is loud to insecure egos. When you stop explaining, justifying, defending you, embody quiet confidence. And narcissists crumble under that stillness because they know what it means. You're not seeking validation anymore. You're not triggered by their games. You've stepped into your inner power and they can't follow you there. There is no more devastating sound to a narcissist than the click of a door closing and not being reopened. No rage, no drama, no begging, just peace. The power of non-reaction. Your greatest revenge is not a clever response. It's not calling them out on social media. It's not exposing their lies. It's choosing to not play the game at all. The narcissist